Hey, this is Nick from Kinetic, and thanks for checking out our new series, From the Floor. One of our goals at Kinetic is improving the level of education in the industry. So we wanted to put out this series to highlight different brokers, to give some quick hitting tips on best practices, common mistakes, or just general brokering advice. Today, we're talking to Alex from Merge Freight. Alex, thanks for being on. You want to do a quick intro?
Sure. Thanks, Nick. I'm, as Nick said, I'm Alex Maurer from Merge Freight and president of Merge Freight. Been in the industry for about 10 years, specifically brokering. I've worn many hats in the industry. I've been in sales, moved over to operations. With that, I've done some carrier sales too. We just started Merge Freight in the Atlanta area, so here we are.
No, it's exciting. So today we want to talk about a few parts of the load booking process. You mentioned in our prep call that reps need to prepare themselves to ask the right questions when talking to carriers. Can you tell me a little bit more about what you mean by that?
Yeah, some really important things on the front end when you pick up a call from a carrier or you make that outbound call. You want to double check their MC, and really that's part of running through your compliance process, making sure they match all your requirements, making sure every broker has a time requirement, how long they've had their authority. You want to confirm the trailer type that they're calling in on. People are scrolling through load boards; they're moving really fast. So double checking that trailer type that they're calling in on that matches your load is a really important step. You want to land on your ETA in a mutual way. So you want to be in partnership with that carrier. Instead of saying, what time are you going to show up? I think one of the best practices in our space is to say, where are you at? How far away are you from the pickup? And then you guys decide on an ETA together instead of asking them to give you some sort of arbitrary time. Another piece, I would always request their driver location. That again helps you double check that ETA that you've decided on. And then you can give your customer the right expectations. And then finally, always triple checking the information in the load and make sure it matches that carrier's expectations on the call.
Yeah, I want to circle back and touch on a couple of things that you said there in terms of checking the MC number and stuff for compliance purposes. To me, like that's important for any outbound call that you make, but it's almost more important for the inbound calls because those are unknown carriers. How do you approach that? Are those just questions you ask right off the bat when talking to an unknown carrier that called in?
I would say that's the first question you ask. Your MC number, the name, and even as far as double checking the phone number and the carrier profile in your system or on Safer, making sure that those match. There's a ton of tools out there that allow you to double check the information. So circling back, MC number, name, email, phone number, make sure those things match your system. It's a great fraud detection piece too, to be honest. You want to protect your company. So
yeah, no, absolutely. And like we kind of talked about that, and there's some overlap with the next question here. But so you've been proactive about checking all this carrier information, which is a super important step. Now you're getting ready to actually book the load. What other information do you need from this carrier to make sure it's a good carrier for this load?
Yeah, and some of this stuff is going to seem a little basic, but I think it's ultimately very important. When you're dispatching an order, you want to get the trailer number, you want to get the truck number, you want to get the driver name and number if the dispatch is willing to give you that. If not, make sure you get a 24-hour dispatch number or a 24-hour dispatch email. Know who you're talking to, know who to ask for, so get the guy's name. Again, that stuff seems very basic, but we've all been on the other side of a load that you can't get in touch with the dispatch and your customer wants to know where it's at 7:30 in the morning. You don't want to be in that situation. So the more information, the better when you're booking the order. Finally, confirming the ETA and confirming the pickup and delivery times. I know I said that in the previous piece, but it's just so important. Get on the same page with your carrier, make sure they agree to the expectations of the order.
Yeah, and you're right. It does sound basic, but I agree. It's something that gets lost in the shuffle a lot, and it's hugely important. The trailer number stuff, I mean, I can't tell you how many times it happens where a customer calls in like, hey, where's my truck? And you say, oh, he's in your dock already. And they're like, okay, cool. What's the trailer number? And if you go into your system, there's no trailer number there. You just look like a fool. So let me follow up by asking you this, like from a management perspective, and I'm going off script here. How do you police or enforce that or actually get people to enter that information and get that information from carriers?
That's a great question. There's two answers to that in my head. The first one is just teaching your people, helping them understand this step has to be filled each time you're talking to a carrier and booking an order. But then, TMSs are robust these days. So everybody should have everybody should be able to police their TMS system in a way that requires the reps to put in that information before they hit send on the rate confirmation. And if you don't have those stops in there, figure out how to do it, because it literally, like, we're humans, right? So you can miss that stuff. If the TMS stops you before you save the order, you're going to go back and put the information in.
Yeah, having that technological backstop is super important.
I want to go back to that point. It really, even having that technological backstop, it's great, but it starts with training your people. They've got to know the right information to put in. So make sure you have a process.
Yeah, and I think training them on the why portion of it, like why it's important, not just telling them, hey man, put in the trailer number, but giving them that example of, well, what if someone calls in and like we don't have the trailer number? Like knowing that implication, yep, I think is important to people.
And you did a really great job in giving a scenario to explain that why portion. Another piece is, what if you're picking up a customer's trailer, right? I mean, like if you have a power only going in to pick up, recording that information is really important. So your driver, you might have an after hours dispatch person that has to give that information to your driver. What if you don't have the right trailer number in there? Somebody's getting a call after hours. It might be your customer. Get the information.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm doing my best to restrain myself from popping up my own comments here, but I can't help myself sometimes.
No, it's good stuff.
Yeah. So like the last thing that we want to talk about is one that I'm actually particularly passionate about, and it's just never wasting a phone call. What does that mean to you? How do you suggest brokers approach these calls with carriers?
Yeah, talking about an inbound call, that carrier is calling in for a reason. They've landed in a geographical location. They need your help filling a back call. So talking about why they're there and how often they're there and putting that into your system can ultimately expand your capacity in the market. That's a pretty specific one example, but if you do that every single time you're talking to a carrier, you're just opening up opportunity for yourself. And I'd say that successful book or not, that question always needs to be asked. Why are you here? How often are you here? And then entering that and saving that information into a system that'll help present that information either automatically or even manually is extremely important. We're filling empty miles. So, making sure you understand why a carrier is there, it's critical.
Yeah. And I've talked about that extensively with a lot of different people. And like my mentality is that you should be treating your customer relationships and your carrier relationships really similarly. Your carriers ultimately are customers in a manner of speaking. So you need to get to know their business model.
Yep.
Other than just that individual lane, I was like, what else should you ask them?
Yeah, and this goes back to whether or not you book the order successfully with the carrier. Understanding what they have in their fleet. So like, let's say you're booking a van order. The next question, successful or not on the booking piece, should be how many other trucks do you have in your fleet and what kind of equipment do you have? Recording that data is powerful because at the end of the day, you can call that carrier out of that location and match them up with another order with another piece of equipment. Again, we were talking about TMS as being usable these days. They are phenomenally usable when you can put the information in and it automatically match those carriers back, right? So the more data that you have from a carrier and your carrier partners, the more powerful you'll be as a broker.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll again go off script a little bit, ask you a similar question to the last one. How do you get this to actually happen? Because it's easy to tell people, don't just hang up the phone after you find out they don't have a truck, right? Continue that conversation. How do you get them to actually do it?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to my two answers that I had before, but I think that they match up. Teaching people to be, and this goes back to management, teaching people to be naturally inquisitive with these carriers is a huge piece of their job. On the sales side, customer sales side of things, we're taught to ask a ton of questions. I think that needs to transfer over to the carrier sales side of things too, almost as table stakes. Like you need to have a ton of questions in your calls with carriers. Where are you at? How often are you here? How many trucks do you have in your fleet? So management and teaching people to be naturally inquisitive, and then making sure that they're putting the data in the system. So just because you ask those questions doesn't mean it's just going to magically appear somewhere. Like, you've got to enter the information into the system, and that's how you're going to, you know, be powerful, not only with you, but you can empower the rest of your company to be successful too, right? It's in your system. Somebody else can access that information at any time.
I really like that line about being naturally inquisitive. I hadn't thought about it that way before. I'm going to steal it.
It's all yours.
Thanks, man. Like, that was all great advice.
I probably stole it from somebody else, you know.
It's the way the industry works. Anyway, like, that was all great advice. I appreciate you taking the time today. We're intentionally keeping these short so that they're quick and digestible. But the industry is incredibly nuanced. These are complicated subjects, and there's always more to learn. Alex, if somebody wants to reach out to you, how do they do it?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'll give my cell phone out. It's 404-510-9705. I'm a broker, so at the end of the day, call me anytime. You know, my email is amaurer@mergefreight.com. But honestly, merge-freight.com is the best way to get in touch with any of us at any time.
Perfect. All right, Alex, thanks again for being on. I know you
man.
just kicked off Merge Freight. I'm really excited to watch you guys grow.
Thanks, man.